Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to another episode of the Dadhood podcast. Alhamdulillah, you can see that I am fully merched out today. So I've got my Dadhood hat on right here. I've got my dad hoodie, as I like to call it. So we've got, inshallah, more of these coming and being available on our website, dadhood.net. So for those who like to support, and, I think even giving it as a gift, maybe even in Ramadan or at any point, I think would be quite nice as well. So if you are thinking about giving a gift to any new upcoming dad or a more experienced dad, then I think definitely grab yourself a hat or a hoodie. There'll be more colors as well, inshallah, in the next supply that we get. So look out for that. You can buy it from dadhood.net. Don't forget that in the link, we have access to our WhatsApp community. We have access to our newsletter subscription, and all the good socials that you need to find as well. Probably at the time that you're listening to this, we have already released a new series called the First Time Father series. And so I definitely encourage you guys to check it out and share the playlist to anybody that you know that is going to become a father, or their wife is expecting at the moment, or they're very new to the game. It's a full playlist that takes you through everything you need to know from the moment that your wife conceives all the way through to the first share of your child. So definitely share that out to friends and family. And also, another thing that's happening for our community is we are planning to take a group of dads and their children on Umrah. And so that's obviously going to be led by an Islamic scholar, but I'll be there organizing some dad activities and child activities whilst we're there on Umrah. And so definitely you can find out more information again on dadhood.net, our website. Right, so let's get into the episodes. Today we have a special brother who has a very special skill, which is authorship. He has been writing books, he's been writing novels, stories, and he kindly approached me and said, "Hey, look, I've got this amazing story coming out, and I think it would be a good idea to speak about that and see how fatherhood actually has influenced a lot of my writing process." So we've got brother Mona here. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. And thanks for the opportunity to be on here. You're talking about your merch. I'm hoping I might get something, for coming on this podcast. That was my main reason. So,
Yeah, no worries, no worries. We'll get some special packages sent out to all the guests and you first, inshallah.
yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So, Munaf, look, the first question that we usually ask our guests is, how many children do you have, and when did you become a father? So, if you don't mind taking us from
Yeah.
there.
Inshallah. Yeah. So I am a father of three children, two girls and a boy. Two are now at university and one is in sixth form. And that happened, so you can work out generally, I should know this, 2004 was when I became a father. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay, mashallah. So I think you might be the most experienced father on our podcast so far in terms of the years you've put in, the amount of children that you have, and what stage your children are at as well in their life.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be quite interesting because a lot of the times we have fathers who are maybe earlier in their years. Like myself, I'm an early father. My eldest is only 7 years old, and my youngest is 1 years old. And that was part of the reason I started this podcast actually was to interview fathers who are slightly older than me in their experience, and so then I can learn, but then everybody else can learn as well. So Monaf, do you want to just also briefly just tell us about like what you do at the moment and how how that links to you actually writing books?
Yeah. So my day job is actually, it's quite, I'd say, it's a standard sort of corporate job. I've been in the corporate world for about 30 years or so, right? Working in software. But writing, my real passion for writing, that's something that goes back to my childhood, really. I always enjoyed writing when I was younger. And the other thing I always enjoyed was reading about history, right? So recently I managed to combine both of those things. When I say recently, I'd probably say, this book here that you've just found here.
Yeah.
That's my first published novel,
Okay.
Which came out a couple of weeks back, called Daughter of Samarkand. Probably started writing that about a year and a half, 2 years ago. but I was doing it outside of my day job, right? So I was doing it maybe first thing in the morning, at night, sometimes just trying to squeeze any time I could get to write. Um, and yeah, alhamdulillah, it got to the point where I sort of completed the manuscript and it was ready to be published. And I thought, okay, let's just publish it. So I self-published, right?
Right.
Because I think there is obviously if you're going to go to a publisher, that's a whole different sort of skill set that you need. But yeah, and it's out there now. So I'm happy to talk about sort of that journey of writing. From when I was younger, and also that journey sort of more recently as well.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so software developer turned author. That's quite interesting. And you say that that kind of experience comes from childhood, right? So you kind of re-exploring maybe some of your fascinations and hobbies that you had when you were younger.
Yeah.
So the title Daughter of Samarkand, I want to come back to that because it sounds really interesting, to be honest, and I can see the front cover looks quite interesting too. So even the illustrations, maybe we can speak about that. But before we
Mm.
get to the book itself, let's go back then, because you mentioned that this sort of passion began in childhood. So at
Yeah.
what age can you remember that you were starting to write, do some creative writing? How old were you then, and what kind of things were you writing at that age?
Yeah, so I always enjoyed writing stories when I was at school. But in fact, sort of writing outside of that, I probably put down in sort of my teens, right?
Hmm.
And at that time, writing for me was really a way for me to process the world around me. It was trying to understand sort of questions. So I grew up in this sort of, I was a childhood in the 80s. My teenage years were in the 90s. So I was really sort of just trying to understand the whole world around me, right? So there was questions of identity. There was questions around sort of, I guess, the the terminology for it is cultural dissonance,
Yeah.
right? So you're understanding your culture at home and then sort of the culture outside of that as well. It's not unique to me. I think most young Muslim men sort of growing up in the 80s and 90s would have had some experience of that. But also, for me, it was really trying to process as well, I guess, my relationship with my father,
Hmm.
right? Because I was sort of first generation. I wasn't actually born here, but I could say, I came over when I was very young. So I was first generation here. And obviously, our father's generation had a completely different sort of uh, childhood to us, right? So, and as a result of that, there was times when sort of, there was, I won't say a clash, right? But there was differences, and you had to navigate those differences. So for me, writing was a way to try and do that, to just try and understand everything going on around the world for me at that time. And it was mainly, I guess, like now I've written a novel, but back then it was more sort of short form. So it would be poetry, it may be sort of just essays I'd write to myself, right? And I read some of it now, and some of it's a bit cringe. It's like, oh, did I really write that? But some of the time, it's like, touching on some really sort of important things around sort of, how do I just deal with the world?
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting actually, because you're right. I think there's a lot of our young our Muslim men, or even Muslim women, just Muslims in general, or even those who are from maybe South Asian backgrounds, or even African backgrounds, that have gone through this period of trying to rediscover themselves through some sort of discovery of identity, or there's been a clash there in terms of growing up in a society where maybe their type of culture isn't accepted, or the way that they look, the way that they dress, the way that they behave. And so they had to really come to terms with those kind of things. Now, there's different ways that people deal with that, right? People deal with that through various different forms. This could be, hiding their identity for a long time, and only when they get to a stage where they feel comfortable, they feel stable, maybe they've earned enough money, or they've stabilized their family. Now they feel like, okay, this might be a chance where I could really be myself, right? So you could
Mm,
go as far as that way, or it could be that people become a bit more reclusive and they start to hide parts of their identity in order to maybe fit in, or to be able to get by and not have certain problems. And then you have others who are very proud of their identity, but they can't really marry that up with the place in which they live in or where they've grown up. And so there's various different challenges there, and people deal with it in different ways. What I find interesting is that you used writing as a way to deal with that. So what was it about the writing process itself that was helping you to understand all of these dynamics?
For me, again, my mind's always quite an organized mind. So I need to sort of map things out in order to understand them. I'm quite sort of practical in that way. So being able to sort of put my thoughts down on paper helped me to sort of just get it out there, because a lot of the time I couldn't talk to people about it, right? I couldn't actually go to my father and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling, because it just wasn't the thing you do, right? With sort of South Asian parents at that time. And even now, to some extent, I think it's interesting because, that sort of migration, I guess the South Asian migration happened in sort of the 60s and so on, right? Where our sort of fathers came over. And then I think a lot of our African brothers and stuff, they would have come over maybe slightly later during the late 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
So a lot of those first gens now are going through what maybe, my sort of generation went through. And I see a lot of parallels in that as well. But for me, writing was just a way of trying to sort of just understand what was going on, right? So I could basically pick it up later and feel sort of a sense of relief in the sense that I've got it out there. And that sort of maybe was a way to temper sort of maybe other activities that I wouldn't need to do then, right? Because I was able to get my thoughts out onto paper and then just get on and go about my general everyday,
Yeah.
So for me, that was really sort of a powerful coping mechanism.
Yeah, it sounds really therapeutic, and to be honest, a methodology that is really popular at the moment when it comes to uh, trying to avoid burnout or overwhelm, or trying to better understand maybe a trauma that you've gone through, is journaling, right? A lot of psychologists and experts do recommend journaling, where you note down your thoughts, and various things. You could keep those thoughts locked away. You can share those thoughts with the world. You could even burn the piece of paper, right, and just have it written down and get rid of it. And so it sounds
And
like,
I used to do that a lot.
really, wow,
seriously, because it's like meditative. It's quite a mindful exercise as well.
yes.
And sometimes you'd write something and you think, oh my God, I'm just like, no, tear it up, throw it away. Right. So yeah, I mean, and that's perfectly okay as well.
Okay, so it sounds like there would be a lot of sort of getting those thoughts down, writing them, and then maybe even reviewing them, or just feeling a sense of satisfaction that you've managed to get your thoughts down, and then moving past that. And it sounds like a very healthy way of coping with all those things that you've mentioned, of dealing with identity and things like that. Now, what I'm interested to know is, first of all, what age were you sort of doing this, or the age bracket in which you were writing in this sort of way, and using it as a method of coping?
I'd say through my teens, probably all the way up until the time I got married, I was still writing, right? Because I wrote stuff to my wife, right? So it was all the way up until that point, and then it kind of just stopped, right? Probably just after I got married, I'd say, and then children came along, and then there was nothing really until probably about 2 or 3 years ago, where I picked it up again.
Wow.
So it was really through my teens, I would say, into my 20s.
What I'm really interested about then is, it sounds like getting married and becoming a dad had maybe put a halt on this sort of hobby that you had on writing. And I don't mean to say that in a negative way, because you're kids, you won't be able to chase your dreams, right? But I think what it is, it's a practical reality, right? That you have to put your energy in a completely different space now. And so what was that like, sort of having to let go of a hobby that you were enjoying, to then focus on this now responsibility of being a spouse and being a father?
Yeah, it wasn't anything. I didn't even think about it. I think, once you get married and once you have children, it just consumes you anyway, right? So you kind of, there's sacrifices you make when you get married. There's sacrifices you make when you have children, but you don't for me personally, I never sort of thought I'm giving up writing so I can do this, right? It just wasn't something that ever came to the front again, because there's always something to do, right? When you have children, there's always something, right? And I was traveling. My work as well at the time was quite busy, so I was traveling a lot for work as well. So I'd sort of be out of the country maybe sometimes, and it was just life. Just life stopped me from getting on and doing that. I mean, ideally, if I could have had a career writing, fine, that would have been brilliant, right? But that doesn't pay the mortgage, unfortunately, right? And that was the practical day-to-day reality was, you have to fend for your family as a father, and as a result of that, you just have to do what needs to be done, right? So, and that was just life, right? For probably a good part of 20 years.
SubhanAllah. I think this touches on a very pertinent point that fathers and mothers as well, they sacrifice a lot to be able to give
Yeah.
their children a head start in life, and to be able to provide the right environment for their children as their children grow up. And a lot of fathers that I speak to through this kind of community that we have of dads, I find that um, they're doing that a lot, right? Maybe they were somebody who was doing a lot of gym, and it doesn't mean they're completely giving up the gym, but maybe those goals that they had of looking a certain type of way, or being involved in a certain type of sport, they had to dial that back. Or maybe it was even like religious goals of like maybe studying Islam in their spare time or memorizing the Quran in their spare time. Those kind of things started slowing down. Or it could have been like a goal or a dream that they had that they were chasing, and they've kind of parked that to the side. And I don't think parents actually park those things aside begrudgingly. I don't think they do it in a way that, oh man, I can't even do that now because I've got kids. I think it's like an acceptance and actually a willingness to be like, hey, right now I'm putting that down and I'm gonna pick up on this responsibility. But what what kind of becomes a problem now is, how do you then pick that back up, and when do you pick that back up? And I think what I find interesting that you've said, and you've kind of got to that point now where maybe a lot of the fathers that I've interviewed haven't got there yet, which is you found that space to really pick up on those things again. How did you get to that point of 3 years ago being like, hey, let me get back into my writing again?
There's a combination of the writing and the I guess. So for me, the other things I love is things like science fiction, right?
Okay.
I love sort of fantasy novels as well, Lord of the Rings, all that kind of
Right.
stuff. And that was something I always used to look at, and I think I could write that, or I could do this. And so about 3 years ago, I can't remember the exact. You know what it was? I'm going to say this, right? But I remember watching Ertugrul, right, for the first time. And it was like, wow, this is brilliant, right? Because you're actually telling history from a completely different narrative. Never heard about this before. And part of me thought, what? I could write something like that. I enjoy writing. I enjoy history. I could write something like that. And that was, I think, was the kind of like a bit of a spark that went off then. And there was another incident, and we can talk about this. I was like, again, I was working at the time, and I was coming back from a business trip. I think I was in Dubai airport or something, and I was browsing through some books. And the books there were books we wouldn't get in the UK at that time. You're talking now again like early 2000s, right? And the one book I found was the book called Crusades Through Arab Eyes by Amin Maalouf, right? And I picked it up and I bought the book and I started reading it, and I was blown away. I was like, whoa, this is like telling, again, a completely different historical narrative to anything I've ever read before. And that was the initial spark, I think, thinking about it. That was that initial spark when I read that book. And I thought, okay, there's so many stories in here. There's so many characters. I need to do this, right? And I kind of like just put that on hold until a point when I thought, right, now I can do this. Now I don't have to take my son football on Saturday morning. I don't need to do this during the week. I don't need to do that during the week. I've got that space. I've got the headspace where I can start doing it, right? And it wasn't like a conscious thing. Like I just started writing. I started writing basically, I think it was a historical fiction, not a historical fiction. It was like a fantasy thing, right? And 20,000 pages in, but just got stuck. And then I was just like browsing, and I sort of saw um, what was it? It was a YouTube video around a woman called Fatima Alfiri, who set up the first university in Fez.
Yeah.
And I was blown away again. It was like, wow, this person existed. And then I thought there's got to be others, and there were. And then suddenly this whole thing came to light around Daughter of Samarkand. So yeah, it wasn't like a singular moment.
Right.
I think it was a combination of things that were always there,
Mm.
that were brewing in the background. And then suddenly it was like, right, let's go and do it.
Right.
Daughter of Allah, ultimately, I think.
Wow. Wow. Really, really interesting. You mentioned some of the genres that you're quite interested in. It seems like science fiction and history seem to come
Yeah.
out there, and they're highlighted there. Um, what's the fascination with that, and why not other genres? Why does history and science fiction draw you in?
So with history, it's all about not so much the events, but the characters in history, right? Because they were human beings like us, and they navigated the world as we navigate the world. But it was different because obviously the technologies that are available at that time were very different to what they're available to us now, and that's something that's always just appealed to me. Is like, how did these people live their lives? And what's that connection that they had to us as well? So that's always been interesting for me. And with science fiction, it's born out of a knowledge of just like the scale of the universe, and just like how amazing it is for me personally. And I was having this conversation with my son literally yesterday, around sort of, when you look at a star, for example, you're not looking at the star now, you're looking at the star like, if it's 20 light years away, that's 20 years ago that light left that star, right? So those kind of things just fascinated me ever since I was young. And sort of science fiction was a way of just like, hey, so we could travel faster than light, and this is what it could be like, right? So yeah, that's always been of interest to me. And fantasy was the other thing as well, right? So always trying to sort of the fantastical elements are always interesting to sort of play around with as well.
For sure. Okay. What I'm interested to ask you is, in terms of your parenting and your fatherhood, did books and reading play a big role and dynamic within how you raise your children? For me personally, me and my wife made a decision that we would not have a TV screen present in the household, but instead would have bookshelves, and we've had all of our books there, and which our kids' books are there, and to sort of start to stimulate that environment of there's books, there's reading time, and these are the things that we're sort of interested in, right? And alhamdulillah, those kind of things are paying off in the sense that we saw that our son started reading at a very early age, and now he's reading books, 3, maybe 4 years ahead of where he is. And hopefully that trickles down to the other kids as well. And obviously we have to keep up our reading as adults too.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know, given that you're so interested in reading and writing, did that play a role in how you raise your children as well?
I don't know if it was a conscious thing or not.
Okay.
And we didn't. I mean, we were okay with TV and stuff, and reading was something we definitely did with all our children, right? And we made a point of reading to them, and with varying degrees of success. My oldest daughter, she loves books. She's doing a degree in sort of literature, right? So comparative literature. So whether that was as a result of us reading to her and sort of giving her that, I don't know. Whether it's just something that she might have done anyway, I don't know, right? And the thing's the same with the other children as well. All children are blessed with some particular talent or skill that they have. And some children will sort of just pick that up, and they'll enjoy reading, and they'll take that forward. So I don't know whether it was a direct impact of us doing that or not, but yeah, I mean, reading was definitely something as really important sort of element to do with your children as well. For any sort of dads out there, because it gives you that time, whether it's just before they go to bed, even bedtime stories, they'll remember that, right? So I think it's really important that that's something you spend time in trying to do.
Yeah, definitely. And another question I had was this sort of experience of writing down your thoughts and just being kind of familiar with the tools of writing, and being comfortable with uh, getting down your ideas and putting them into stories or putting them into whatever pieces of writing you're putting them into. Uh, this sort of skill, obviously, you've had this skill for a long time. You had this since childhood. And so maybe for you, it's kind of second nature, and it's something that you feel comfortable with. But for many men, especially, and dads out there, they never think, oh, wait, I need to write down my thoughts, or I need to be creative when it comes to writing, or I need to, even if they don't want to write a book, but they don't really think about writing anything, to be honest. And how would you maybe go about encouraging other dads to pick up this skill of writing, regardless of whether it's for, you know, actually writing a whole book and self-publishing or publishing, or whether it's just to do with the personal, therapeutic advantages of writing? How would you sort of expose that world to a dad that doesn't have the same access that you have?
Cool. That's a good question. I think I think oh, I think it's important because obviously now there's a big onslaught of technology, right? With your phone and whatever else. And the only thing I can really sort of recommend is like um, writing. It doesn't have to start with you physically writing something. You could be a thought in your brain that you think, oh, I need to capture this, right? So you could capture that with a voice note, for example. You could capture that just simply typing it out on your phone or sending yourself a text message or a WhatsApp or whatever else. But even something simple like that, I felt this way when this thing happened today. Just capturing that at that point in time could lead to something else later on, right? And that's I still do a lot of that now. If I might be walking down the street, I might sort of hear something, or I might hear a song, or I might see an interaction with somebody, and I think, oh, that would be, that's interesting. I'll make a note of it, and then I might incorporate that at another time into a story or something. So even once you do that, you'll find you might sort of go back to those notes at a later date, and something else, you'll think, oh, yeah, I remember this, and that might trigger something, of interest for you to sort of take forward at a later date. Ultimately, you either enjoy writing or you don't really enjoy writing. If it's not within you to be a writer, then you're not going to do it. But if I was to encourage people, I'd just say that just try and capture those moments wherever you are that are of interest to you, and then see where that takes you.
It sounds like you need to be really present with yourself, because people can let those moments pass them by, right? A thought could come and it
100%.
can
Yeah.
go. An interaction that you see in the street could come and it could go. But if you're somebody that's quite present, and you understand presence of mind, and you're not maybe somebody who's overthinking too much, or you're not lost all the time in your head, then you can actually capture those. But if you're not, and there's a lot going on inside of yourself, or around you, it'll be quite hard to find those moments and to make the effort to really capture them. But I think that's where the therapeutic process really starts, right? It's like actually being present and then taking it a
Yeah.
step forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? I think writing is a mindful activity as well,
Mm.
right? Because when I write now, I'm fully absorbed in what I'm doing. Even if you're at work and you're putting presentation together,
Yeah.
you are fully absorbed in that moment. You're writing, and you're sort of writing it's more performative then, because you're probably writing for an audience, right? So it's slightly different, but you still have to be mindful of what you're doing at that point.
How will AI change that now?
Um, I don't think AI will change that creative process, right? Because when I write, I'm writing from here, and that's what's coming out onto paper. Where AI helps is, for me personally, is probably the planning side of thing again. So I might have story arcs and character arcs, and they're all coming together, and I'll use AI to help me try and map that out.
Mm-hmm.
So not the actual writing itself, that has to come from there or from there. It's got to be like human led. And I think you can see, personally, I think you can tell when something's written with AI nowadays. And I'm not one of these people that's like, AI is bad, ban it, because I think there is definitely sort of some good to come from that as well, right? Because it can help you. And it can help you if writing is something you want to do. I use it, right? So I'll write a passage and then I'll use AI tools to spell check, to check the grammar, and all of that stuff. So that level of AI has always been with us for a long time, right? So it's not like that's different. Where it is different is you can say, AI, write me a story, and it will write you a story, right? But that you can tell it's just not gonna, it's gonna lack any kind. You'll know because it doesn't have that heart, it doesn't have that soul that you put into it as a writer. And there are certain telltale signs that you'll sort of see as well. So I don't think it will ever replace the creative aspect of writing. I think that's still going to be something that you'll be able to distinguish, but it will definitely help to sort of it helped me because and the other place it helped me is when I was writing and I sort of get into the end of this manuscript. So what am I going to do now? Should I go to a publisher or can I self-publish?
Right.
And it was only through like saying ChatGPT, what can I do? And ChatGPT said, well, you've got this option. You could go Amazon KDP. You could go this way. You could go to a publisher. And then I realized actually the process of self-publishing, I could do that, right? There's a lot of work involved, right? Because you have to do all the promotion yourself. You have to do all the cover art yourself. You've got to sort out the proofreading. You've got to get everybody so it's a big uplift. It's a big heavy lift to do it yourself. But I realized I could do it myself. And then I did, right? Ultimately, alhamdulillah. So so that's my thoughts on AI.
Oh, excellent. Daughter of Samarkand. Give me a summary, first of all, of this story. Give me the blurb.
Yeah, so Daughter of Samarkand is about a young 17-year-old woman called Thuraya bint Yusuf. She is a gifted artist and a gifted illuminator who lives in Samarkand. Her father is a calligrapher. He's a very well-respected calligrapher. But for women at that time, obviously it was not like a profession that they could openly do. But she has this gift, and her father is slightly older, so he's struggling now to produce some of these the artwork. A commission comes along from the Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, and we basically follow the story of Thuraya and the commission. Whether she wins it or not, you'll have to read the book. But then you follow the journey of Thuraya, and it's like a bit of a coming-of-age story. There is how knowledge basically flowed along the Silk Road as well. We start off in Samarkand. We get to Bukhara actually in the first book as well, so not too much of a spoiler there. And how sort of knowledge flowed along that sort of from Baghdad all the way to sort of along the Silk Road, I found was really fascinating, and that's why I sort of wrote about that piece. But yeah, it follows her journey. There's her journey obviously is different. One of the questions I've been asked is, well, why did you choose a female protagonist, right? Male, because and I've said this, is like the male protagonist, that wouldn't be much of a story there. The guy would have won the commission. He would have gone to Baghdad. End of story. Right? There's not like you can put a few things in there, but for a woman, it was very different, right? Because there was the societal norms, cultural norms, which they had to battle with. So yeah, that's a quick blurb around the actual story itself.
Beautiful.
Without
Beautiful.
and it's the first book in a series of books. So we're going to be following. She leaves Samarkand and then Super goes, traveling up the Silk Road.
Amazing. What audience is this targeted towards?
In terms of age, I think anybody, young adult upwards, can read it and appreciate it. I've tried to make it accessible, so Muslim, non-Muslim, and yeah, I think it's a novel that most people can hopefully pick up and enjoy if historical fiction is your genre. Even if it's not, I think it's a really enjoyable read. So yeah, encourage you, please, Go out and buy it. Let me know what you think as well, because it's the first in a series of books. So Ink and Gold series is going to be something, maybe 3 books, maybe 4. I'm not sure yet, but yeah, yeah.
Amazing. Like I was telling you before, in my local Islamic center, we have a library, and we got in touch with loads of different Muslim authors, in order to house their books in our libraries so that our community can have more access to Muslim written books, and
Mm,
support Muslim authors. And so I think it's really, really important to support projects like this, just to kind of, number one, support our brothers and sisters. Number two, to show that the talent that we have in our community of writing, of storytelling. And number three, our Muslim authors will be able to tell our historical stories better than anyone else, because there is a feeling of ownership over these stories, right? I'm sure that when you're in the process of writing this and you're looking at the historical backdrop of the setting that you're going to have this protagonist in, there was a personal connection with this particular history, right? And
yeah,
that's going to speak through the writing, and that's going to come to life, really. And so, actually, you probably get an even better reading experience, than maybe picking up maybe a similar historical fiction book off the shelves from anyone else. So
yeah.
that's my piece to everyone else there, to really try and support this, because I think not only are you supporting somebody, but you're probably going to get a really good reading experience out of it.
No, thanks for that. I think that's really true as well. And I think one other thing I just want to add to that point around sort of just writing in general. I think for Muslims particularly, there's a lot of books around Islam, information about Islam, right? So we grow up with reading the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example, which is really important. There's a lot of books on Islamic history, and there's a lot of books on how to practice our faith, right? But sometimes we don't have that sort of lived in experience or the sort of the imagination that goes with that, right? So, for example, you can read about things like sabr or patience, okay? But actually living that through an abstract kind of idea is different to actually reading a story where somebody's going through those
Yes.
trials and you sort of working through those trials with that sort of imaginative character can really help, I think. And that's where you just don't see it in the Muslim
Yes.
community. You just don't find historical fiction. You don't find fiction writers.
Mm.
There's loads of publishers and there's loads of writers that will write about Islam in general, which is great and it needs to be out there, but very few fiction writers. So, but like I said, I think it's really important.
No, that's a great point. We tend to, um, when it comes to our religion and talking about religion or spreading our religion, we tend to speak about it in a very matter of fact way,
Yeah,
which there's no problem with that, like you're saying as well. But we don't tend to humanize the principles in our religion. We tend to like sanctify them a lot, right? This
yeah,
aspect of patience, or this aspect of piety, or this aspect of whatever else characteristics and manners and akhlaq and things like that we're taught from the books of the scholars and things like this. But we never tend to humanize them. And I think having fiction writers helps to humanize a lot of these principles that we have been taught growing up, and that we need to continue exploring and learning as we continue through life. So I think
yeah,
that actually, Muslim fiction writers have a very important space, even just within understanding our religion, right?
yeah,
I think that they need to equally be there just as much as scholars need to be there, and there's a back and forth between the scholars and the fiction writers, where the scholars might have the academic background to understand the religion, but the fiction writers can actually take that and present it to the people in a way that is accessible. And I
yeah,
think what you're saying in terms of exploring these narratives through a story, and through challenges, I think it's beautiful, to be honest. I want to ask you, what was the inspiration though? Like, how did you fall into being inspired to write about Samarkand, and and this sort of era, and a female protagonist, and this whole thing about her father is a calligrapher, and all these kind of things? Like, Where did all of that inspiration come from?
Um, so, like I said, I was sort of stuck with writing this sort of fantasy novel at that time.
Yeah.
Because the thing with fantasy, and it's going slightly off topic, is like you have to build that whole world. You have to
Mm,
build a whole sort of structure in that world, including the religion of that world or whatever, you know. And I always struggle that coming from a faith-based approach, because I feel a bit uncomfortable trying to construct a new religion, even if it's just fantasy. Whereas if you're world building with history, it's different because those things are already there, right? So I just got stuck with this fantasy novel, and like I discovered Fatima El Firi, and then it was like there's got to be other women like that have done this, and then that's when I sort of got this idea for Daughter of Samarkand, because I've just found the Silk Road has always like been this
yeah.
evocative place,
Yeah.
right? Using silk and spices, traveling along this road. You see camels in the sunset. That's the land route. There's also the maritime route as well. And I just thought, okay, and Samarkand is something somewhere rather that's you look at it now, it's just beautiful. You've got those blue and turquoise domes. You've got all those tiles. But the time I'm writing about is actually before then,
Mm,
right? So all of that Samarkand we see now was rebuilt after the Mongols basically tore it all down beforehand, right? And it just appealed to me. I just thought this would be the ideal place to start a novel about knowledge, right? And and that was it. That was the start of it. And I just wrote a couple of paragraphs, and it just took off from there. So I've talked about the female protagonist, why I chose a female protagonist, and Samarkand I chose because it was at a global crossroads.
mm,
Because you at this time particularly, you had Caliph al Mamun, the House of Wisdom, right, was probably the global center of it was the place to go if you wanted to find any knowledge, right? But he was bringing knowledge from the Greeks. You had Al Andalus as well, right? So all the way from that Atlantic coast all the way to Baghdad, and then you were getting knowledge from China and India as well, and that was coming in. And Samarkand was one of the first places where it would that knowledge would find a place. And then you had the scholars as well, like Al Bukhari, obviously, just down the road in Bukhara, Al Farghani, Al Khwarizmi as well. They were all from that
right.
region, right? So it just seemed like a really good starting point for that journey.
Wow. Wow. And once a reader picks this up and gets through it, what do you hope that reader accomplishes, or is walks away with after finishing the last pages?
Yeah, I mean, and I wrote about this on my Substack recently, actually. So I just wanted to open people's hearts and minds ultimately, right? Whether that's I want to learn more about history, whether it's I want to learn more about Islam, whether
Mm,
it's you know, it's just want to open that sort of a little door, right, where they want to go and explore a bit more, just try to understand a bit more. Maybe Thuraya is somebody they can relate to. You don't have to be a young woman, right? You can be a young man, and there could be some skill that you have that you want to bring forward. Maybe it opens that kind of door. Maybe you want to start exploring that a bit more. So yeah, for me, it's just about opening hearts if I can. Alhamdulillah, inshallah. So
mashallah, that's excellent. Where can we find it?
on Amazon right now, unfortunately, as a self-publisher, there's not many options. So on Amazon at the moment is the place you'll find it.
Okay, amazing. All right, so we'll include the link to the Amazon link in the description, and share that out so everybody can grab themselves a copy, inshallah. And then leave some good reviews, guys, because that always helps, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah.
As we're wrapping up on this, I wanted to go back towards the beginning of the conversation. You mentioned that when you were a child, or when you were growing up in child, teenage years, there were a lot of dynamics in your life that you were trying to keep hold of, and writing is something that helped you through that experience, right? Um, Growing up, what was your experience like with your own father? Um, and did that inform, did that experience inform the types of things that you were writing? Um, and did that also inform maybe even the way that you started parenting your own children?
Um, wow, yes, that's a deep one. Yeah, I mean, I've touched on this already. Obviously, I think first gen here, we were brought up in a completely different sort of social structure to our parents, right? So there was challenges. I don't know, unique to me. Um, and my earlier writing, as I said, was me trying to process how to deal with a lot of that. Um, and in terms of did that sort of impact how I sort of was a father to my children? I'm not sure.
Mm,
I really not something I've ever thought about in great deal. Um, One thing I will say, and I think it's really important, is that my father, he passed away in April last year, right?
Allah.
And uh, for the younger fathers, where you've still got fathers, right? I think it's really important that you just try and get as much information and knowledge from them, because I never really talked to my dad, right?
Right.
It was only towards the later times that I did that. And my grandfather, he lived with us as well, and I never spoke to him at all. And I'm thinking, now I've started writing and I've got that interest. I'm like, I wish I'd had those conversations, because then I'd have those stories, right? But I just don't. So, I'd encourage any younger fathers out there to really make use of that time you've got now with your own fathers to just find out as much information as you can about their lives, right? Because I think we just don't do that. And I don't think it's unique to Muslim dads
Mm,
or non-Muslim dads. It's just something I think men generally just find it difficult to do with their own fathers,
right.
right? So I've tried to have a more sort of open relationship one with my son and my daughters as well, so they can have that conversation with me. Um, so yeah, just try and do that. One thing I will say as well, just want to finish things off, um, is when I started writing again, like recently, it wasn't like more to do with me. I was writing, and I was very conscious now. I'd be writing, and my children would be reading what I'm
Mm,
writing. So there was always this thing like, am I going to leave something that's going to be beneficial out
yep.
there, right? And like I said, I want it to open hearts and minds. And for me as well, because I did it quite late in life, right? It's like, I think as fathers, we have to be role models as well. And for me, I don't know if you guys watch things like X
Yeah,
Factor,
yeah.
right? Right. So you always have that sort of slightly older dude or that slightly older girl that comes on, and they're singing and they've got much of that fantastic voice. And then Simon Cowell asks them, why are you doing
Yeah.
this? Right. And they turn around and say, well, I wanted to prove to my children that,
Mm,
it's never too late to do it. So me writing this book is that moment. It's my X Factor
wow.
moment almost. Right. So, yeah. So if I was, that's my sort of message to your sort of, I guess, sort of your viewers, right? It's never too late to do something like this, but also while you have the time, always make the most of that time, and speak to your parents, speak to your fathers, and find out as much as you can about them.
Wow. That's really inspirational, man. I've had a goal and objective for such a long time to sit with my mum and write a book for her, basically based on her life, right? Like, she's had this crazy life, loads of ups and downs. Um, and she's always been up for it. She's always been up for it. And I've just never found the time to sit
Do
down
it.
with her and do that. But I think the fact that you're saying all of this, I think I need to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, it's like there's little snippets I got from my dad later on, um, but they were just like little snippets, right? But with my grandfather, I mean, he lived at a time was completely different, right? I mean, his story about when he left Kenya, and India, and went to Kenya and stuff. There's just so much there that I just don't know, right? So, and I just think it could have been a fantastic book in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, 100% do it before it's too late.
Amazing. Munaf, thanks so much for coming on. Great episode. Thanks for sharing all your thoughts. And yeah, everyone, make sure you go and check out wherever you're listening this to. There will be some sort of description, some sort of comment. The book is called The Daughter of Samarkand. Type that in or click on the link, and inshallah, buy yourself a copy, and then let us know what you think of it. I still need to read it, so I will let Munaf know my thoughts, and we'll share that out to the community, the WhatsApp community as well, and they can share their thoughts as well, inshallah. Jazakallah for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you on again.
Thank you. Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Mike, salam. All right, guys. So if you enjoyed that video, please do subscribe and follow me on TikTok and Instagram for more dad related content. Check out some of my previous videos and look forward to the next ones.